The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
As a lifelong supporter of Israel, it has become clear to me the Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th. Prime Minister Netanyahu has lost his way by allowing his political survival to take the precedence over the best interests of Israel. Israel cannot survive if it becomes a pariah. People on all sides of this war are turning away from a two-state solution, including Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. As the highest-ranking Jewish elected official in our government and as a staunch defender of Israel, I rise today to say unequivocally, this is a grave mistake for Israel, for Palestinians, for the region, and for the world.
That was Senator Chuck Schumer yesterday. And happy Friday, everybody. Hey, sorry for getting this out a little bit late, but there were a couple things I was waiting on. Anyway, gosh, I keep wanting to move away from all this stuff, but man, it's definitely interesting. That was, I completely did not expect that coming out of Chuck Schumer. I might play a little bit more because he did highlight the 4 steps that need to be taken. And step number 4 was get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu. So the reason that honestly, let me see how I want to say this. Okay, first of all, I think it's good. Netanyahu's a bad dude. He just is. He's a bad guy. And if you're Jewish listening to this, you've got to admit that. The guy's not a good guy. He's not trustworthy. He is basically a power-hungry monger, and he does not have anyone's interest but his own. Honestly, he's a career politician, and so is Chuck Schumer, by the way. So fundamentally, I thought it was amazing that Chuck Schumer said that. Now, Chuck Schumer, to me, is honestly not very different than Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, these career politicians. He actually reminds me of, if you're a Simpsons fan, I'll have to look this up. There's a character, Montgomery Burns. He's like the powerful, wealthy factory owner or something. He's always like, Smithers, go fetch me the blah, blah, blah. Kind of talks like that. Anyway, I think Chuck Schumer looks like Montgomery Burns. I might have to go on to The Simpsons and see if they base that character off of him. But anyway, Chuck Schumer does not have the cojones to have done that on his own. No chance. And so that was scripted. It was part of the plan. I am very impressed that Chuck Schumer agreed to do it, because if you go, and not if you, because you're not going to, but I did. So I went on a lot of the prominent Jewish, talking heads that I follow, and man, he got murdered. He got murdered in his own community. People are calling him an anti-Semite. That just kind of shows you how, loosey-goosey they've made that term to where they slap it on anyone that doesn't agree with their narrative. And I unfortunately think that's the wrong way to approach it, because then you lose value in the actual term, because there are anti-Semites out there for sure. And those are the ones that deserve that label. But, a lot of Jewish folks were unbelievably upset with Chuck Schumer yesterday. And again, they're calling him anti-Semitic, and that he hates his Jewishness, which couldn't be farther from the truth, because again, Chuck Schumer is the epitome of that. He really is. And again, like I said, I don't think he has the fortitude to have done that on his own. Therefore, that was part of, quote unquote, the plan. And I have to imagine We've talked about Netanyahu, the forces lining up against him, the kind of the powerful forces. Hillary Clinton said something. I mean, President Biden said stuff, but that you could say is maybe they're just playing good cop, bad cop with Kamala Harris. I mean, Bernie Sanders, another Jewish man, he's gone after him pretty consistently. Bernie, I think, is legit in everything he said because he's gone after him from day one that he kind of entered the fray. And then Nancy Pelosi even said something. So we've kind of called this a little that they're who knows, maybe Netanyahu's going to be the scapegoat. Maybe again, his administration is known to be a very far right leaning administration. So maybe the liberal base in the United States is like, okay, this is great. This is finally time. I will say this, the entire world, he has lost the entire world. Netanyahu, that is. I mean, the entire world outside of Israel and then whoever supports them on a one-by-one individual basis, is against him and is against what Israel's done. And I think Biden's feeling a little bit of that in the polls and among the voter base and all that. I definitely think that. Actually, I think that for sure because, gosh, I've had conversations with staunch Democrats. I mean, really hardcore Democrats who, they won't come out and say, I'm going to vote for Trump, but they say, I'm not voting for Biden. So that's pretty interesting. Anyway, that was that piece. I mean, pretty big news. It definitely was pretty big news.
Allegation about Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers, just after we learn he's being considered as a running mate for independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. CNN says it knows of two people who Rodgers shared disturbing conspiracy theories with about the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting. CNN's Pamela Brown says Rodgers told her in 2013 that the school shooting, which killed 20 children and 6 adults, was an inside job orchestrated by the government, and the media intentionally ignored this. Another person reportedly said Rodgers claimed Sandy Hook never happened and that all the children were actors. Rodgers declined to comment to CNN.
Are you starting to see how this stuff works? Holy mackerel. So that came out yesterday on CNN, which is right. I think in, when was it? Wednesday's episode, we talked about how Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was looking at Aaron Rodgers or Jesse the Body Ventura. I wanted him to go MC Hammer, but I don't think he's going to bring in the hammer. Don't hurt him, Hammer. But Aaron Rodgers, look at that. 2 days later, this stuff is starting to come out. And again, when I say come out, I mean they're putting it out there. And man, this is how it happens. This is how it happens. Now, the thing about that to me was I really don't think RFK is going to pick Aaron Rodgers. I do think that would be the wrong pick for VP. And again, nothing against Aaron Rodgers. I like Aaron Rodgers. I liked his stance on COVID. I like the fact that he stands up for what he believes in. So, there's no issues there. I just don't think he's the right optics for that presidential run by RF Kennedy Jr. But again, look at that. It's like now they're going after him. They're really going to go after him. It'll be interesting to see what else happens. It'll be interesting to see if there's any ramifications on his football season next season, see if the NFL gets involved here. So anyway, we'll see.
It's going to take some time before there would be any sort of ban on TikTok, because the way this would have to work is that after passage of the House, which happened today, it would need to go on to the Senate. The Senate would have to pass it. Then the president would have to sign it. And then even after that happens, the clock would then begin for a 6-month period by which TikTok would have to be divested by the Chinese parent company ByteDance. If they can't do that, then it will be banned. If they can do that, then things go on uninterrupted. We can continue to post our dancing videos on TikTok. But
all right, really quick. So the TikTok saga continues. That was a little succinct summary from a dude on MSNBC I thought was good. I know. I can't believe I played an MSNBC clip. But hey, see, I'm an equal opportunity information provider. But anyway, I cut it right there for a second. I will play the rest because, again, it's not about stupid dance videos. That's not the intent of this. And that's really a small bit of TikTok. Of course, that's on there. But what else is on there is tremendous information. And there's a lot of scuttlebutt about how this is being driven by pro-Israeli lobby group, AIPAC. We've talked about it a little bit, but the amount of pro-Palestinian content on TikTok is insane. I mean, it's insane. There's literally a revolution on TikTok for freeing of Palestine. There absolutely is. So is this part of shutting that down?
Look, at the end of the day, the question is, okay, so if this does look like it has a path to being passed and signed into law by the president, which the president has said he would do, who might buy TikTok? And we have to remember that there is precedent for this, because then President Donald Trump in 2020 tried to do the exact same thing, which was force ByteDance to divest TikTok. And when he tried to do so, there were two potential suitors that were named, Oracle and also Walmart. So there is potentially a market for this company to be sold. But again, how this plays out in 2024, we'll have to see.
All right, so that was what I talked about previous episode. I forgot Walmart was a potential suitor as well, but so was Microsoft. So I think those were the three guys. Again, I mean, how weird is it that this thing was exactly what took place in 2020? It's been dormant for 3 years, like we talked in the last episode, and now it's rearing its head again. So anyway, TikTok update. I will tell you, the younger generation is pissed. I absolutely understand where they're coming from. Again, I personally think the long-term ramifications of taking away the primary method of creative and intellectual expression for an entire generation, that's going to have ramifications. That really is. I mean, that is like a big picture problem. I don't think anyone's really talking about, okay, what does this mean that we're basically taking their voice away? And that's fundamentally, if there was a ban on TikTok, which I don't think it's ever going to get there, I think that is something that would happen. I think what's going to happen is this is going to be used to basically create the digital version of the Patriot Act, get some more restrictions in place. They'll possibly lump AI into it, and this will become a way to create guardrails and also have a little bit of control over maybe opposing viewpoints. I don't know. We'll see. Another interesting thing that was in the news this morning, actually, was that it looks like there's a settlement that took place with the National Realtors Organization, and this could affect, or the National Association of Realtors, my bad, and this could affect the future of the 6% commission when it comes to buying and selling of homes, which, God, I've always kind of had issues with that. And again, I apologize to my realtor friends for saying this, but I guess this is more in California. First of all, in California, where it's not hard selling a house in California, 6% overall, 3 and 3, I think is just way too much. I mean, there was a point in California where you put a house on the market, it sells that same day, and you barely had to do anything. So, and we're talking about, ridiculous prices out here. In Ohio, where I'm from, or other Midwest states where, it's a lot harder to sell a home. The appreciation of that home, maybe over the past 20 years has not tripled like some of the places in California. Yeah, those realtors actually deserve 3% on each side. They really do, because I think a lot more effort goes into the marketing and selling of that property versus, hot markets where, again, they just list it on the MLS, and within days, sometimes hours, you have multiple bids that, a lot of times drive the price up over the asking price. I'm not sure that really warrants 3% commissions on both sides, the buyer and the seller. The other issue that I've always had is, it never made sense to me why the seller is paying 3%, or let's say they negotiate it down to 2%, 4% in total. I see a lot of 5% in total, meaning 2.5. I do see 4.5%, 2.5% going to the buyer's agent, 2% going to the seller's agent. Because really, if you think about it, the seller's agent, you're pretty much being gifted money because you're guaranteed to make money for selling that property. But I never quite understood why the seller should be responsible for both sides of that. I actually think a much more honest transaction would take place, and a better negotiated transaction for the buyer would take place if the buyer is paying their agent their commission, because then that goes into the cost of what they're paying. I think a lot of times when the buyer's agent is like, okay, I just want to close this transaction so I can get paid, they're not necessarily acting in the best interest of their buyer. And on the same side, the seller's agent is probably thinking the same thing. Okay, let's just close this transaction so we both get paid. There's a level of that. I'm sure there's a level of that. So anyway, interesting what could happen in the real estate space. Any realtors out there, I would love to get your opinion on this, and maybe I'm wrong, and so maybe there's a follow-up or more information I can share with everybody, so feel free to reach out to me on that front. All right, this is so funny. I love it when in the middle of recording, I get like text messages from friends with stuff. So I just got this from a friend, and it is from Dr. Rand Paul. Rand Paul is a senator from Kentucky. I'm going to read this to you because Rand Paul's legit. Rand Paul is legit. He is absolutely one of the few people in Congress that I think gets it right more than he gets it wrong. So here's what he posted, and my friend Jill just sent this to me. She lives in Kentucky, and she's a big Rand Paul fan. So she said, the passage of the House TikTok ban, I'm sorry, not she, this is coming from Rand Paul. The passage of the House TikTok ban is not just a misguided overreach. It's a draconian measure that stifles free expression, tramples constitutional rights, and disrupts the economic pursuits of millions of Americans. With an iron fist, Congress dictated an unrealistic and narrow path for divestment, effectively banning TikTok and ignoring its substantial investments in data security. This act is not securing our nation. It's a disturbing gift of unprecedented authority to President Biden and the surveillance state that threatens the very core of American digital innovation and free expression. So anyway, I like the first two paragraphs of that. The third paragraph, I don't know, was a little bit maybe off point in my estimation. The other thing about TikTok, which is interesting, is the business that gets conducted there. I don't personally do business on TikTok, but I do know a lot of people that seem to make a lot of money off of TikTok, and that's potentially one of their primary sources of income. And so, there's ramifications of removing that from people. So anyway, thought I would read that. Definitely interesting take from Senator Rand Paul. He's one of the most boisterous opponents of this Restrict Act. And again, remember, it's not just about TikTok. If something passes, it's not just going to be about TikTok. It's going to be an overarching thing that gives a variety of, benefits to the passing entity, but the one that will be in the news will just be one of them. But there'll be like 500 things that they're able to do, and the banning of TikTok will be one of them, and the one that gets the most airtime. All right. Anyway, man, I'll try to find more topics to talk about, but these are definitely the things that seem to be occupying most of the headlines. Regardless, have a wonderful weekend. Hope you guys get to enjoy yourselves, get out there, get some fresh air, go for some walks, get some steps in, catch up on any episodes. This week was a light week for me, man. I only put out 3 episodes. My bad on that. But anyway, call a spade a spade. We'll continue to move forward. Keep the comments coming. Keep all the feedback coming. I love it. Topics, everything, send them my way. Appreciate everybody. Talk to you soon. Have a wonderful weekend.
The ending was terrific. This episode is being brought to you by the upcoming book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You. That's right, bro wrote a book, and it's coming soon. Stay tuned.